Frugal Crafter. It feels like it's been so long since we've just like hung out and chatted a bit, but I want to answer a question that has been asked so many times over the years. I used to have a standard answer for it, but my answer has changed. So the question I get asked a lot is, Lindsay, do you ever get creative block, and how do you deal with creative block? Well, I used to say, well, I'll just reorganize something in my studio to kind of tidy up and clean, and then I eventually find something that I'd rather do than cleaning, and I work on that. So that is a great way to get inspired, because you just kind of get going through your stuff, and you'll find a product that you've forgotten about, and it's kind of like when you send your kids to go clean their room, and then they'll clean for a little bit, then they forgot about, and then they end up playing with a toy. It's kind of that same idea, but I'm fairly organized and tidied up now, so I don't really my room doesn't get to that stage, and I don't want to just move stuff around for the sake of moving stuff around. So I started to think about other ways that can inspire you to be creative. I know a lot of people set a New Year's resolution. I want to be more creative in 2018. And a resolution like that is almost guaranteed to make you fail. And the reason why is that it's not specific enough. If you have the entire day off and you say, I'm going to create today, it's going to be really hard to get started because you've left yourself so many options. If you're someone like me who paints and draws and crafts and does all these different things, to say, I have the whole day to create, that can be so daunting and overwhelming, because then I've got to pick. And if you have a lot of options, you can quickly succumb to decision fatigue before you've actually decided to do something. So if you're trying to set a goal of creativity, I would set something very specific, like I'm going to draw in my sketchbook with colored pencils for 15 minutes every day. You have very concrete things that you're going to do. So you don't have to wonder, well, what am I going to draw? Am I going to use my toned tan paper, or am I going to use my big sheet of watercolor? What medium? No, you're going to use your sketchbook. You're going to use your pencils, and you're going to do it for 15 minutes. You have laid down the law. You have told yourself in a very kind of tight little compartment what you're going to do. Of course, you can draw anything you want to. You can draw a bird, you can draw a plane, you can draw Superman, but you have given yourself the constraints to be creative in 15 minutes. Something like that, when you only have a teeny bit of time every day to create, is perfect. So if it means you set up a schedule because you don't want to draw every day, maybe one day you draw for 15 minutes, the next day you knit for 15 minutes, the next day you make jewelry for 15 minutes, that's fine. But give yourself a very specific task to do, and that way you'll find yourself being creative in that task, because it gets you through the hardest part of creativity, and that is getting started. And I'm sure it's like that with pretty much anything. If you've ever tried to start a new exercise routine, the hardest thing is those first 5 minutes on the treadmill. You kind of will hem and haw. Well, I gotta put on my sweat clothes, and I gotta put my hair in a ponytail, and I've got to lace up my shoes, and I've got to find something to listen to on my phone or my iPod. And you make it such a big production where if you just stepped on the darn treadmill and walked, or just opened the door and walked out of your house before you'd had all that, you'd be done exercising by the time you finished up putting on the right clothes and getting the right music and doing this and doing that. Just getting started is the hardest thing. But once you get started, you're going to feed off that energy of creating. I know often we'll tell our kids, well, go make something, go be creative. Or art teachers will tell their students, go be creative, create with whatever you want. That's a crippling proposition, because you have so many options. So basically, I think the thing you need for creativity is confines. You need a boundary. There's been so many days, and I create for a living, and there have been days where I have given myself the entire day to create, film, and edit a project, something that should just take me a couple of hours. Give myself the entire day, and I will fart around thinking about all the different things I could do, and I'll pick up this, and I'll pick up that, and I'll wander over there, and I'll wander over there, and I'll look at this paper, and I'll look at that paper, and it won't be until I have 2 hours left, I have the exact amount of time left I need to complete this task, that I pick something, get down to business, and get it done. So setting yourself up confines like, I'm going to use this new pack of paper I bought. I'm going to use these markers. I'm going to use these stamps, and I'm going to make a card. Giving yourself some very, I wouldn't even say strict, but just concrete, structured, perimeters to work in is going to make you so much more productive, and you'll get stuff done instead of thinking about or hemming and hawing or worried about. It's opportunity cost. You're worrying about the thing you're missing out on by picking this. Well, if I use this paper, then I don't get to use that pretty paper. If I use these stamps, I don't get to use those stamps. You worry about the things you're missing out on that you don't actually get anything done. So set yourself some boundaries. I go, well, I used to go, we don't have any local scrapbook groups anymore, but I used to go to the scrapbooking group, and there would be women that would load up their vans with supplies, and it would take them, 30 minutes just to haul everything into their table and then lay everything out. And, meanwhile, I come in with one bag. I mean, I had plenty of supplies, but I knew that if I brought more than one bag of supplies, then I wouldn't get hardly anything done. So since I've limited the amount of options I have to work with, I can, I can pick colored pencils or I can pick watercolor paints. Well, I'm going to use this. I've limited the options so I get stuff done quicker. So anytime you can limit your decisions when you're creating or when you're getting started to create, you are going to get into the process so much quicker. Now, I mean, it's totally fine to get into your art journal and you say, okay, I'm going to use colored pencils and I'm going to use this, and you do your thing for 15 minutes and you realize, well, I want to use my markers. That would be perfect here. And then, oh, this would work great. And that's fine. That's when you're in the flow state of creativity, but you don't start off in the flow state. The flow state takes a little bit of time to get to. So if you can start with some concrete barriers or boundaries, that's a better word, some concrete perimeters, that's a better word, to get yourself started, you're going to find that you're much more creative in the time that you give yourself. Now, something else that can be a confine, and I've had this as a confine, I'm sure you've had this as a confine too from time to time in your life, is your budget. So let's say you don't have any money for any new supplies, you have to use what you have. That is actually one of the greatest boundaries to put up, or perimeters to put up, because then you're forced to use what you have. I feel like especially, let's take scrapbooking for instance, because that's a hobby that I started as an adult, and pretty much all these other things that I do, I started as a child, that I can remember the beginning of this hobby. When I had one tote of supplies, I got so much more done. As my collection grew and ended up with a room full of supplies, I created less. So just having fewer things gives you fewer decisions to make, gives you fewer options, and yields more productivity. So kind of keep that in mind. And I know sometimes people will feel guilty because, well, I bought all this stuff and I don't even feel like I can't even pick anything to do, and you just start to feel really bad, and then you look at your supplies and you feel guilty about it because you've spent the money on it and you're not using them. So if that's the kind of barrier that's in your way, that you have a hard time creating because when you go to create you just feel bad about what you've spent and what you've produced, do this. This is something I used to do a lot because I didn't have that much money to spend on craft supplies, and I love to get new things. So I would set up a goal for myself, and I'm going to use scrapbooking again because when my children were really little, that was where I spent most of my creative time, because I didn't have a lot of time every day, and my kids were cute and they were always doing cute things. I took so many pictures, and that felt very practical, and I felt like whatever I do creatively really ought to be practical. I was also sending in my work to be published to scrapbook magazines, not very successfully, I might add, but I was doing that anyway. And so like when they would take a nap, I would create a layout. And so I set myself the goal that I wasn't going to buy anything until I had completed 10 layouts, which was pretty easy to do in those days because I was taking so many pictures. So it kept me on track with documenting my children's lives as they were growing up, because I had 3 kids really close together. When our son was not even 2, we had our twins. So I mean, we had all this cuteness happening at once, and I didn't want to leave anybody out. And I did find scrapbooking to be a very rewarding, creative, fulfilling hobby. So I would do that, and it would kind of curb my urge to spend. And a lot of times I would get those 10 layouts done, and I'd be like, well, I guess I'll save my money a little bit longer because I'm still having fun. And then by the time I actually went out shopping, maybe with a girlfriend, then I had 20 or 30 bucks to spend, because I didn't feel badly about spending that money because I knew I was using my stuff up and I had reach those goals. And this brings me to something else I just read. I know I'm talking fast. I am so sorry if you're having a hard time understanding me. I do get comments like that, and I do apologize because I get all wound up, and I'm really excited about this topic, because if I can help you be more creative, then that's what I want to do. So where was I? So I was reading this book that my sister gave me for Christmas, and it was the Little Book of Hygge, which is like this Danish cozy minimalism. Clearly not a minimalist, but I love all those minimalist things. I'm collecting books about minimalism. No, I'm not, but wouldn't that be ironic, like collecting books about storage and minimalism? That would totally be me. I'm just an excessive person, I guess. But anyway, I had talking slow. This is important. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. So I was reading this portion of the book, and it said that like Danish people. I don't know if this is all Danish people because I don't know any Danes, but this is what it said in the book, and it was written by an actual Danish person. They talk about when you want to purchase a big ticket item, you save up the money, or maybe it's not all Danish people. Maybe it was just this author, but he saved up this money for a chair, but he didn't buy the chair until he had achieved a goal. It might have been a promotion at work, or it might have been like just a personal goal that he had set for himself. Maybe it was a fitness goal, maybe it was a productivity or creative goal or something, but he had set a goal and he did not allow himself to purchase that thing until he hit the goal. That's kind of what the get 10 layouts done before you buy anything else. That's also a goal. So when you purchase the next thing, you're going to feel good because, oh, I'm using the stuff I already have, so that's good. This is my reward. I have this money saved up that I can use, and then whatever I spend it on, you're going to feel good about. So when you look at that item that you spent money on, it might be a new set of expensive watercolors, or it might be a new skein of yarn. When you look at that item that you bought, you're going to be filled with positive feelings because you knew that you achieved a goal to be able to afford that, and then you're going to feel good looking at it instead of feeling shame if you feel like you bought a bunch of stuff that you're never going to use. And then you're going to feel good creating with it, and it's just gonna be this kind of big good vibe snowball that that keeps you creating more, because the better you feel about your creative space, about the products that you have, about the way you spend your time, the more you're going to want to do that, because you're going to just be reaffirming yourself every single time. Now, another bit of guilt that we feel sometimes, and I say we because I feel it too, you never know it to look at my house some days, but we feel the house isn't clean, then we shouldn't be spending frivolous time creating. And or if I haven't exercised today, well, I really shouldn't spend time creating because I should exercise first, or I should do this before I do that. And then we end up just feeling bad about ourselves. It's not motivating us to clean or exercise. We just are so hateful to ourselves sometimes that we'll just sit down on the couch and not do anything, maybe scroll through our phones, or just because we can't get started because we feel so bad about ourselves. We feel bad that we haven't exercised, we feel bad that our kitchen's a mess, we feel bad that we got a sink full of dishes, and then we feel bad that we're not creating, but we won't allow ourselves to create until we've done the important work of the day. So something that has helped me overcome that is I noticed that I had a lot of little wasted pockets in my day, and I know you guys are probably way more busier than I do and don't have the freedom that I have. I'm very fortunate that or say, well, just do what I do because it's easy. No, I'm not going to say that. But for instance, I'm an early riser. I usually wake up naturally around 5:40 in the morning, and it's part of that's because I have to get my son up at 6 and I have to get my girls up at 7. They have buses to catch, they have school and whatnot. But I found myself, I was waking up before my alarm. So I get up, I start my coffee, make my son breakfast, get him up, and then I'll like tidy up the kitchen, I'll get the girls' breakfast set up, and then by the time that he's on the bus, I've got a 20-minute window before I have to get my daughters up. So I'll hop on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and then I feed them their breakfast, get their lunch made, get them off to school, and then I'll finish up, wake my husband up, then I'll finish up the last 20 minutes of my workout, and then by that time I can, finish checking my emails, get in the shower, and then start my day, and I am ready for the day of working on my business, which is a creative business. I mean, there are definitely, and the reason I think I can get stuff done is because I have limitations. It's like, today you are working with this product for this company, or you're creating this class or this training video for this client's products. So I have those confines. It might be up to me what subject matter I use, but like the materials are usually picked out ahead of time for certain projects. And then I have one of those glorious days where I can do anything, and it's like, well, what do I do? Oh my gosh, I have so much stuff to pick from. Oh my gosh, and like that's when I'm not productive, because it's like, what do I choose? What do I choose? It's like the old adage, if you want something done, ask a busy person, because they're so used to like pivoting and just starting. That's what busy people have. That's what they do. They just start. So whatever you can do to make yourself jump in and start, that's how you will break through the creative block. Stephen King, famous writer, right here from my home state of Maine, he wrote a book called On Writing, and he talks about just writing 2,000 words every day. It's not, just write something, just make something. It doesn't have to be good, just make something. He talks about taking a bunch of characters and throwing them into a room together and see what they do. That's kind of like just grabbing a few random supplies, putting them on your table, and just telling yourself you're going to use those. Another thing that helps me is that sometimes I have all these ideas, I have like all this creative energy, but I do not have the time, or I'm not in a position to use it. It might be like 15 minutes before I'm gonna go to bed, I come up with a great idea. Or it could be I'm sitting in the basketball stands, daydreaming, you know, my kids are playing basketball. I do try to focus as well as I can on basketball games, but I do tend to trail off, especially if my kids aren't actually on the floor. If they're on the bench, my imagination wanders, and I'll come up with these ideas. And what I do is I actually take my phone, and there's like just a little notepad app. It comes in like every phone, I think, has this notepad app, and I just start a new note, or I have a note called video ideas, and I just write down, I type in my little video ideas, and I'll group them actually. Like if I have a jewelry idea, I'll put it with jewelry ideas. So if I have like a few hours to play with beads, I will make a bunch of projects at once while I have everything out, because that's something that takes a lot of time. And I think it's a lot of wasted time is the pulling out supplies and packing away supplies. So another creative tip I have for you is to set up a space where you can be creative. Now again, I know we don't all have the same situation. I had unfinished basement, and I just took a corner of it over, and this is where we are. I mean, the joists are still raw. Those are cement walls behind me. It's never been finished, except for that one wall there, because that's the other side of my son's room. You know, I just started stacking up shelves I would find on the side of the road. I mean, it's definitely this hobbled together production, but I have a big space, and I'm very fortunate. But if you don't, you could take, you know, you could take a plastic rolling cart. You know, you can get them at like Walmart or Staples or any, even drugstores, I think, sell them, just plastic rolling carts, and you can put your supplies in there, and you can you slide it under the kitchen table if you need to. If that's the only space you have, when it's time to work, you roll out that cart, you set out your pallet on top, and you set out the table and you work. If you have kids, you could use, you know, you could get something with latches on it if you're worried that they might get into it and hurt themselves. But there's an option for everyone, and granted, you probably will be more productive in a situation like that because you're right in a central place where you are every day. It's not like you have to go downstairs or drive to a studio or go to some unusual part of your home that you're not usually in. And you have a limited amount of supplies because you don't have, you know, a huge massive amount. You've got a limited amount of supplies, you've got a limited amount of space, and you've got a limited amount of time, and those are what leads to creativity. There's a great talk on creativity, and if I can find it, I'll link it in the video description below. And one of my viewers actually recommended this talk to me a few years ago, and it was by John Cleese, a very funny guy. He, Monty Python guy, you know who John Cleese is. He did a talk on creativity. He talked about that too, about how creativity needs a set amount of time. It needs boundaries. So when he's going to write a skit, he gives himself like 2 hours or gives himself an hour, because if he has all day, if it's an open-ended time, then it's really easy to get distracted or to put it off. And I was reading, I can't remember if it was a Fly Lady book or book, but it was a book about organizing. And she was talking about the different things that throw us off when we're trying to like get cleaned up, declutter, all that jazz. And she talked about, she called it the IGAD system, IGAD, and it stands for I got all day. You know, so if it's like, you know, 8 in the morning and you know, your husband doesn't get home till 5 and you're staying at home with the kids, well, I got all day to clean this place up. And then come like 4:30, it's like, come on kids, you know, and that used to be me, you know, I'd be like, oh, daddy's home soon, come on guys, grab a basket and start filling. So, you know, I totally get that. So if I'd set myself that boundary, like, well, I gotta be out the door in you know, an hour, let's tidy this place up, I could have cleaned up and enjoyed it all day and been creating because I wouldn't have felt guilty about it. So I hope these little stumbling blocks that I have come across over the years will help you. I apologize for talking fast. I know I get excited. So hopefully there'll be some reasonable closed captions under this video if I did get a little carried away, so you can follow my train of thought. But basically, set yourself some boundaries. Boundaries equal creativity. I know it feels completely backwards because we should all just be free spirits flitting from project to project and, you know, being our fabulous artsy selves, but we need some boundaries, and that is where the creativity starts. So if you have any tips on how you break through creative block, leave them in the comments below because I'd love to hear them. I know all of our friends here in the community would love to see them, and I thank you so much for sticking around to the end. It was a long video. I talked a lot. I hope it was somewhat helpful. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.